Welcome back to the No Gray Areas podcast. I'm your host, Pat McCullough. Today we're diving into something that impacts every one of us, our health. Joining us is Dr. Joy Kong, a triple board certified physician and a globally recognized leader in ethical stem cell therapy. In this conversation, we explore how the body actually heals and the fascinating science behind how our cells function and change as we age. It's a conversation that might challenge the way you think about health and healing. So let's jump in. Dr. Joy, thank you so much for joining us on the No Gray Areas podcast. We are so excited, first of all, just to hear your story. And then later on in the podcast, we're going to get into exactly what you do. You've written a book. You work with regenerative medicine. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But I want to jump right in because you have a fascinating story, which is what you wrote the book about. Let's go back. You were born and grew up in China.
Yes. So grew up actually on a university campus, which has a significant impact on my life.
Yeah.
So my dad is a professor and I grew up, was born pretty much on the university campus and then had my kindergarten, elementary school, high school, all on the university campus.
Yeah. So
in Beijing.
What was your dad a professor of?
Internal combustion engine engineering.
Oh my goodness. Okay. And then is that it? That was in Beijing?
Yeah. So,
which is, for the audience that may not know, that's not a small city, right?
It's a profound, powerful city. It's been the capital of China for 600 years. So lots of history.
I don't want to interrupt, Dr. Joy, but that's fascinating what you just said. Most of our listeners are probably Americans. And you said it's been the capital for 600 years?
Yeah. And
our
in China,
country's not even close to that old.
And in China, that's like nothing. It's like 600 years. Okay. So that's often things are 800, 1,000, 2,000 years old.
Yeah.
Like I went to Confucius Temple. I'm actually Confucius descendant.
Yeah.
I remember going to Confucius Temple. He died about 2,500 years ago, and I was touching his tomb. I mean, that's 2,500-year history.
See, I've been to the Middle East. Like we were talking before we turned on these mics, I want to go to China someday. I would love to go to China and visit. But I've been to the Middle East, which is similar. There's a lot of ancient history there. And it is so profound and mind-blowing to stand there and see something that's 2,000-3,000 years old. Mm-hmm. Or I was in Egypt and I'm standing at those pyramids and you're looking at these things that were built 3,000 years ago. And then in the U.S., a lot of times we go by a barn that may be 100 years old and we're like, ooh, that's really old.
I know.
It's so crazy, isn't it? Okay, so let's go back to your childhood. So you're basically born on a college campus. You go through elementary school there. What was your childhood like in China?
So I had a great time. So at the time, China was a little bit more rural. Even on the university campus, it was, more nature, right? Yeah. The place I lived in was next to a pond. There are all these, reeds that's growing from the pond, a little creek. So as a kid, it was lovely. The only thing that I had trouble with was discipline. So there were, we were expected to conform to the ideology, behavior. Mm-hmm. I was kicked out of a dance group 3 times in kindergarten. So that was the beginning of the sign that Joy has trouble with conforming with rules. Because to me, I've always believed the rules are made up, right?
Yeah.
By somebody.
Yeah.
So if the rule doesn't make sense to me, that's not my rule. If it makes sense, I will definitely abide by it. But it doesn't make sense, then it's not mine. Yeah. So then it doesn't apply to me. So
I'm smiling because I have a close friend I've known for over 30 years now, and you just described him perfectly. That's how he is. He's like, I don't care who made the rule. If it doesn't make sense to me, I'm going to question it. So that's kind of how he's wired too. So that was you as a little girl. So you're getting kicked out of dance classes. In trouble. You're not going to go along with something just because everyone else is or because it's a rule. You're going to question it and ask why. That's kind of how you were wired.
Yeah, I just kind of did. A lot of times what I wanted.
Yeah.
So I was an okay student. I didn't really apply myself that much, but yeah, I was in trouble a little bit.
Yeah.
I think, at that time, there's a lot of playing, right, with other kids and reading. I love reading science fiction. But I think I was, fairly happy, except, issues with parents, like a lot of Chinese kids have.
Yeah.
Because the Chinese parents are fairly strict and fairly opinionated.
Yeah.
The tiger mom, that's
Yep.
permeated into this culture. But
explain that really quickly for some of our audience that may not understand when they talk about a tiger mom.
Yeah. So a very strong-willed mother who has specific ideas about how the child should have his or her life. And there's a lot of discipline, a lot of driving forward as far as to make sure that they are doing things that supposed to make them more competent and make them more talented, right? Growing their talents and abilities. But that takes away from their own free time and enjoyment, right? Just the kids being kids. So no, they want the kids to do things. And
you're saying that's a little more of the Chinese culture at that time, at least.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And I think
strict parenting.
And this is double-edged sword. So it did bring up the whole Chinese population, the culture of extremely hardworking.
Yep. Well-disciplined,
willing
hardworking.
To give the time and energy and not thinking second thoughts about it. When I went to China, people do overtime. They were even asking to be paid overtime. They want to do it. That's expected. So the work ethic is very different. This is how they can build hospitals in days, right? Look at what's going on here. I was just in Northern California. I remember talking to the Uber driver. He said, they've been trying to build a railroad between San Francisco and Los Angeles for 10 years. And so they built a little stretch. I said, they should contract with a Chinese company.
Yeah, the Chinese would have it done in 2 weeks.
We'll be done with months. Yeah, for sure. It's going to be beautiful. But that's a different, work ethic.
What's the other side of it? Because you jumped into where I was going to ask you that. I love that you said there's a double edge to it.
Yeah.
So one side is it does create very disciplined, hardworking. What's the other side of it?
The other side is we are very foreign to the idea of celebrating ourselves, of our accomplishments, because we're always looking at what we're not good at yet and how far we should go and we can go. So my eyes are always on what more can I do instead of actually looking back saying, hey, Joy did pretty good.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a foreign idea.
Yeah.
So
do you still struggle with that?
Well, I, have met people along the way who was teaching me how to celebrate myself. And of course, and this was just, I remember 2 years ago, and I was like, how? What do you mean?
Yeah.
So then think back. Where were you? And how far have you come? And then once I started looking back, and I was like, wow, I guess Joy's pretty cool. I mean, that's a lot to accomplish. But that's not what I was thinking, like if I just were left to my own devices without reminders.
Yeah.
So the problem is that we are not feeling enough joy, right, in life, and just or even gratitude of how far we've gone and who just appreciating who we are.
Yeah.
And also the sense of I think it's a self-love in a sense, because while you're driving so hard on yourself, there's judgment on yourself, right? I'm not proficient enough here. I haven't done good enough here. Yeah. So it's always what's not enough.
Yeah.
So then the judgment does rob you of joy. And a lot of judgment actually comes from comparison with others, right? So how do you know you haven't done as well? When you look at someone else that has done a lot better, then you can say, oh boy, I better work harder and do better. Yeah. So the comparison, and they said that's it's just a saying, basically comparison robs you of the joy of life.
I was just going to say that. I just read that recently, and I was looking back on my life, and I'm like, man, that is so true when I look back on my life. When I'm comparing myself to others, there was nothing that was robbing me of my joy quicker than that. Like that's a dangerous thing to go into. But that was part of the culture that you grew up in, right?
And I think that culture comes from the fact that we are such a huge population as a nation.
Yeah.
And there's only a few positions at the top. Yeah. So if you want to get to the top, then you have to compare, right? Can I get there?
Yeah.
So, and China is actually one of the earliest meritocracy nations, because I think it was 600 years ago, they instituted the national examination system, right? So you don't have to be an aristocracy.
Yeah.
This is unheard of in Europe. right? You have to be born into certain positions in order to be considered to be an official at a certain level. But no, in China, they said, if you can show,
600 years ago, they were saying.
Yeah, you can show, take this national exam. You can be the lowest of low peasant with nothing. But if you score number 1, you can be the prime minister.
Wow,
and that's
interesting.
revolutionary.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. That was 600 years ago where that happened.
Right. And can you imagine everybody now are candidates to be the prime minister, right? If you work hard enough.
Wow.
So imagine the competition.
Yeah. And then to your point, it's one of the largest nations. So again, for audience that may not know, you look at a map of the world, and China's not a huge chunk of that, but that's a third of the population of the world's population, correct? Or close to it. Yeah. So there's a lot of people there, to your point.
And they're all trying to get to the top. Yeah. So that's one of the problems. So that kind of comparison and heart driving is permeated in every corner of society and in every family.
Yeah.
Maybe some families are a little bit more laissez-faire, but most of them are going to.
Which goes back to what you were talking about, like when you were describing the tiger mom, or the reason parents are like that is because it's a culture like that where there's a lot of people and you have an opportunity, no matter who you are, of moving up as long as you do well. So what parent wouldn't want their kid to do well?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pushing,
I
driving.
remember, for me, I don't know. My mom did not bother me that much, even though I was mediocre student for a long time because I didn't spend that much time studying and I was fine. So she didn't really bother me. But I think my brother at one point, my brother's super smart.
Yeah.
And
older or younger brother?
Younger.
Okay.
And very well read, history buff, right? Love history. And so he's a young man who's engrossed with learning, but not the kind that my mom thinks he should be devoting his time to. So his grades weren't really that great in school. But I remember one time at dinner table, my mom said, if I were you, I would be just really embarrassed. I would have enough self-esteem to start really putting my effort in to get my grades up. I remember my brother, we're all eating with chopsticks, right? My brother put the chopstick down and just stood up and just left.
Wow.
So that shows you, right?
Yeah.
He was trying to enjoy a meal, but no, my mom had to
it's
drive it in.
Yeah. So let me go back to something else you said that I thought was interesting. You said you were a mediocre student, but you're reading science magazines. And so when you look back on your life, you were a learner though. You liked to learn. It just wasn't necessarily what you were getting in school at that time.
Right.
Correct. It's similar to me. I mean, if someone were to look at my grades, I had really good grades in elementary school and then in junior high and high school. Mediocre would be an exaggeration. They were below that. But what no one saw was I'm up at 1 or 2 in the morning reading books. I love to learn. I just necessarily want to learn what they were teaching me in the classroom at that time. So that just sounds like a little bit of your story, right? And that's going to circle back later to what you end up in because you were interested in science at an early age then?
Yeah. I thought it was just fascinating. I thought that was what an incredible system that the West set up, right?
Yeah.
The testing hypothesis and then finding out what the truth is. I love the system. I thought, wow, what a beautiful
and that will
philosophy.
kind of navigate where you go in life, right? With what you end up choosing to do.
Yeah. I think when I was, science was very much just, that's it's like a religion, right? This is how you find truth. And of course, China was a communist country at the time, well, still sort of, but at the time, very much so. And that means respecting science and not believing that there is an external superior power, basically. It's very much an atheist philosophy because, that's something that has not been proven.
Yeah.
Right? They call it superstition.
Yeah.
So they call all religions pretty much superstition. So that's how I grew up, thinking that this material world is all there is. Nothing more beyond.
Yeah.
And there's no God. So I was very, very arrogant. So what's interesting was in the 80s, so when I was I was a teenager, the 80s, there was a revival of the traditional Chinese culture because it was very much almost looked down upon and, just stifled for decades during Cultural Revolution. And that just absolutely, there's not much tradition to speak of. So one of the things that has been prominent in Chinese culture or spirituality is Qigong, which is the meditation, the Chinese, the cultivation of qi, right, of life energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very much, not endorsed. And then in the 80s, that
Not
started to
endorsed in
not
communism or
no, that was suppressed.
Yep.
And then in the 80s, there's a revival of about Qigong.
Okay.
And so people started to talk about how you can use qi to navigate, right, your health and to even access things that previously you had no access to.
Yeah.
And then there are books started to be published of stories of how Qigong masters were able to look at somebody's body and could see the internal organs. And to me, it was like, what? Like, how? That's not scientific.
Yeah.
How did he know?
Yeah.
Right? You first, it's like, no, you want to reject. What happened was that I read a book, and the book talked about.
How old were you at this time that you're reading this book?
I was already 18 when I read that book. But I think I started to be interested in even earlier than that, maybe 15. But when I read the book, that's when all these real life examples were accounted, right? Were talked about in the book, and hundreds of them. And at one point, my conclusion was, okay, I got it. This happens. This can happen. It's real.
Even as a scientist, you're going, there's enough
these
evidence
crazy
here.
things of how they can be healed by energy. Like, okay, it happens. So me, if I'm a true scientist, I better find out how it happens, not to reject that it happened.
Interesting.
But that's what happens with a lot of people who are of science, including a lot of doctors these days. If they don't know how something happens, they would rather just reject. So because they don't understand. But that's not being a scientist.
Yeah.
If you really respect science, the right attitude is, oh my goodness, this happens and I have no idea how to explain it with the tools I have. But let's be a little bit excited that we can develop tools that can explain this one day. So that's what got me really into like life sciences, because that was a way to almost like decode secrets of the universe.
Yeah.
Because there are secrets, right? The fact that guy could see internal organs, like what's going on with, is it eyes? Like, does he have special eyes? Was it a special rays? Like, what the hell, right?
Yeah.
So there must be things that we can explain one day, but we just don't have the instruments to measure.
Dr. Joy, that's one of the things that and I'm glad you brought that up, because I think when we talk about science or medicine, or even in our Western mindset, a lot of times, we've almost tried to eliminate mystery. There's still a lot of mystery to life. There's still a lot of things we don't know. I think I've fallen into that trap of thinking like we almost know everything, but there's so much we have no idea about. And so what you're saying is, so often medicine or science, they eliminate that, or they try to eliminate that mystery. And you as an 18-year-old are starting to identify that, man, there's some things that we don't really know about, and I'm not going to reject these. I want to dig into it a little bit and try to figure it out. Yeah.
I think because I don't know why I'm such a stickler for truth. Like, I just believe that I need to find out what is real, because I don't want to fool myself.
Yeah.
Like, if I trick myself into thinking a certain way and that's wrong, that's really dumb.
Yeah.
Like, I just hate being really dumb and really wrong.
Yeah.
So I want to be correct.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know what the truth is.
Yeah. Could write a book titled that, Really Dumb and Really Wrong. that might be the story of my life. So you moved to the U.S. then when you're like 20, right? You said you were about 20. Why did you end up coming up? Was it for school?
Hey, we hope you've enjoyed this episode so far. Be sure to like and subscribe to not miss a future podcast. Okay, let's get back to the episode.
So this book talks about how I got here. Yes, I wanted to come here for school and for exploring a new future.
Yeah.
And I think I wanted to come here for an adventure. And this is kind of me jumping into the unknown. A lot of people, I think a lot of people, I'm hoping that they do something without fully understanding why. And that was me, because I thought, I was excited about America, partially because of the American media, right? They permeates the world. So when I was in China in the late 80s, that's when American programs, TV shows started to permeate, start to show up. And I was just fascinated, what an interesting world, with all these races, all living together. They're all different, but somehow peacefully. I thought peacefully. Never mind, third day of me being in the U.S., it was Rodney King riot, right? I was like, what's going on? I thought people love each other here.
So interesting. So part of your reason to come is you saw all these ethnicities living together in harmony.
I watched the TV show Hunter.
Oh, I love that show in the 80s.
I love it. The police chief was black, right?
Yes.
And there's all these races. I was like, America, you go, you figure it out. You know how to, bring about racial harmony. I was really impressed. And then third day in San Francisco, and my friend told me, don't go out. The blacks are really mad at the whites, but they're taking it out on Asians. So just don't leave your house.
Yes.
I was like, what's going on? I thought they love each other. Yeah.
Wow. So interesting. Well, that kind of led into my next question was going to be, what were some of the big cultural differences that you saw? But so right away, one of the things that you thought was true of America, you found out really quickly wasn't necessarily true, that we weren't all living in harmony as ethnic groups.
Right. Yeah. So that was interesting. The other thing was that people were not as open-minded as I thought. They were a little insular. The typical example was their lack of acceptance, especially at that time, of other forms of medicine besides the traditional Western form, because now things are a lot different, because this is almost 34 years later. But in the early 90s, if I talk about acupuncture in San Francisco, you think that's a more hippie city. Yeah. No, people look at me like I'm out there. Like my mind, it's not sound. So then I learned, okay, this is a subject that's not going to go well. Yeah. But isn't that fascinating? How that has turned around, and how many people say, "Oh, of course, acupuncture works. It works really well." So now it's all okay.
Really seen a lot of that. Would you say? I mean, this is your world more than mine, but I feel like we've really seen that in like the last 10 years more so, in our Western mindset, where we're being a little more open to, hey, the rest of the world and cultures like China have thousands of years of history in medicine. There may be some things that we can learn from them. Have you seen that shift a lot in the last, would you say decade or?
Yeah, I think even maybe 20 years. I think acupuncture started to be covered by insurance probably about 20 years ago. Yeah. So that started to happen, which is really, it was very, very, very nice, very comforting. Because when I first went to UCLA, so that's 1999, I remember at UCLA Medical School courtyard talking to this kid who was a MD, PhD student, very nerdy, very, very smart. And we somehow mentioned Chinese medicine and acupuncture. And he's like, there's no evidence that the acupuncture actually works. I was like, are you serious? And I actually was at a library, UCLA Biomedical Library, and there were actually journals from China. Like there's some are in English. I can't remember if they were in Chinese, but Chinese studies. Mm-hmm. Don't you, just because you can't read the language doesn't mean that these people, when they wrote the paper, that they don't understand science, right? They just expressed it in a different language. Yeah. So you see reams and reams of papers written about these treatments, what they did for people, how they think they worked. And they were measuring all kinds of parameters. So it's very scientific. So I was, very disappointed with this young, smart kid. And I said, did you even go to the library and try to look for what's being published? Just because you don't know something exists doesn't mean they don't exist. So then he changed his rhetoric. He said, well, we don't know how it works. So it can't be, can't be real, right? Like we don't even know how.
Goes back to what you were saying earlier about if there's mystery in it, we automatically just throw it out.
Yeah, but what's really interesting was a year later, we started taking pharmacology class. And we can talk until our face is blue about the pharmacodynamics, right? How long the drug lasts in the body and what's the lethal dose. And, we talk about all these things about the drugs and what they can be helpful for. And the bottom line was, how do the drugs work? And most of the time, the final conclusion was mechanism unknown. And that's what really pissed me off. Because I remember that conversation of that kid telling me, "Oh, we don't know how it works, so how can it be real?"
But we're prescribing drugs all the time where we're saying mechanism unknown.
Right? We hold these drugs as, oh boy, we have a encyclopedia about these drugs. They're like a Bible to us, right?
Yeah.
So that's a form of arrogance.
Yeah. Let me go back to something. I didn't want to miss this because you mentioned it. That's what you saw me jotting down here. You said that you highly recommend jumping into something where there's a lot of unknowns, which is you moving over here.
Yeah.
I mean, you're moving to a different culture. I don't want to leave that because I think our audience and myself, that's so important to understand. Why would you say that's so important? Like you go, I hope everybody jumps into things that there's unknowns.
Okay, the story of how I decided to come to America, I've always known, I think since I was maybe 13, 15 maybe, knowing my parents' students have gone abroad and the kind of things they saw, their experience, just like such an exciting world. So I thought I wanted to leave. But when I was the first year in college studying architecture, that's when that's 1989, when the Tiananmen Square incident happened. And the government changed their policy for students and basically making it extremely difficult to leave the country. So I had to face the choice of whether I should leave then or wait until about 9 years later. So, it came sooner, and which made it a lot more difficult because it's very, very difficult for a student to get a college scholarship. It's much easier to get a graduate scholarship because, I can go study, whatever. For graduate school, it's a lot easier. The college students, we had to rely on scholarships and it's very hard to get. So why would I want to do that? Why would I want to put myself through that? And none of my classmates wanted to do that because they knew how next to impossible it was.
Yeah.
So then I had to decide, do I want to take on this very difficult task of trying to leave? And why? Why would I put this much effort, right? Just go for it. Why? So I had to understand why I wanted to leave. And I was like doing charts of why, things that I think I want to do, which means, take a, adventure, that's right, new experience. I was like, well, there are adventures to be had in China. It's not like I'm here, then there's no adventure. Well, getting to know the world, that's another reason, explore the world. And I was like, well, I can explore the world here by reading books, by, getting to know what's going on in the world. And it doesn't mean that I have to, uproot myself to a different country. And then I said, what about challenges? Just seek challenge because that brings growth. And then I was thinking, it's pretty challenging to try to succeed in China. That's a huge challenge. So if I want challenge.
So you're eliminating all your whys on this.
So I could just challenge myself right here. Yeah. So I thought for 3 days and 3 nights, my brain hurt. It was so exhausting to try to find a reason. And then at the very end, I told my friend, I said, I'm done thinking. I don't know why. I don't have a reason. I just know I'm going to have to go. So I just have to go with that.
Wow, interesting. Which isn't an answer. Logic. Going back to, again, how you were wired at that time, it's not an answer that would really fit with you or your family at that time because everything's got to be more science and you have an answer, but you didn't really have a why. You're just going, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And you did it.
It's very strange because I am a logical person.
Yeah.
And it's so illogical.
Yeah. So I'm curious, getting to talk to someone who spent their first 20 years in a completely different culture, a communist culture, one that in your years growing up, you were starting to see them transition out of some of that and go back to, what was the words you used or the terminology you used? Going back to more of a historical...
Yeah, traditional wisdom.
Yeah, traditional wisdom. So you're kind of watching that happen. But that's what you grow up with. And then you come over to the U.S., radically different culture in a lot of ways. And you said before we turned the mics, you're an adaptive person. So you could probably go anywhere in the world and adapt pretty quickly. But I'm curious, what were some of the good and bad things that you saw? Like you come into another culture, and like we said, every culture has beauty and every culture has ugliness.
Oh.
You come over here. What were some of the beautiful things you saw about our culture? And what were some of the ugly things you saw about our culture?
The best is that you can be anything you want. That one, it's just so incredible. Of course, you get a little lost with so many options
Yeah.
because I literally could do anything. I can become anything. I was
Yeah.
thinking, okay, I can be an actress. I can just go and do it. Or, I actually chose, I thought, okay, I'll become a journalist.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna, that's kind of cool. Or you can become anything. Everything's wide open. And that's not the case in China because I remember you have to apply to certain departments. You have to apply to certain schools and certain department. Depending on where your score is, then you end up in a particular major. And that is your major. That's it, pretty much for life. I remember
So and what age are you starting to have to
that's
pick
18.
that? So 18, you basically have your life drawn out for you.
You make that decision. And it's just so funny, just a story. So people get that perspective. I have a super smart classmate, talented. He's very talented, like in drawing and, artistic. But he's very smart in science as well. So he got into the top university, Beijing University, in the nuclear science department.
Yeah.
So high-end, high-tech stuff. He didn't like it. He wanted to study psychology. But guess what he had to show in order to transfer to psychology department? He has to have the signature from his department head, and I think signature from the department that he wants to go to. It has to certify that he has extraordinary talent in that major that he wants to transfer to. So,
wow, that's so foreign to most of us listening right now.
So just show me how you can show extraordinary talent in psychology. So he couldn't prove that he's good. He's stuck. So it doesn't matter what you want. But here, it's just wide open. It's a little confusing because you can be anything. So you get a little lost.
Yeah.
So I was a little lost.
Yeah.
And it's not a good feeling when you're lost because I didn't know where I was going.
Yeah.
And so how am I going to spend this life?
Yeah.
And that was the hardest, not knowing a direction.
So what was another, that's a great one. Just one of the beautiful things you saw about this culture was that you really have the freedom to go to be whatever you want to be, or at least pursue it. You may find out you don't have any talent or gifts in that area and have to shift, but then you can shift too without getting signatures from the head of a department or something.
Yeah.
That was one of what's another beautiful thing? And then I want you to talk about some of maybe the ugly things about our culture.
Another beautiful thing came from something not so good, right?
Mm.
So in the book, I talked about trauma and hardship, being in a situation where I was very stuck, that I didn't know I had a way out. I thought if I left that very abusive situation, that I would be homeless, that I'll be sent back to China.
Mm-hmm.
Not until this friend who was an attorney, not until he saw the situation I was in and he was really worried about me. And he took the yellow pages and showed me all these organizations that are there to help people who were in difficult situations.
Mm.
I had no idea that there were that kind of safety net in this culture.
Yeah.
And that was wonderful.
Yeah.
Right? That's the human side.
Yeah.
That's the charitable and humane part of this culture that people want to help. So that is something I didn't know. I didn't, I thought I was at a dead end.
Yeah.
And turned out that no, there are all these organizations.
Dr. Joy, that's such a great point because, again, it is one of the beautiful things about this culture. And going back to your story, you were in a very difficult situation. You talked a little bit about it to me before we turn on the mics. You were in an abusive relationship and felt stuck, as a lot of people that are in abusive relationships, they feel trapped. But you started to see that, and I think, we're sitting in Phoenix, Arizona right now doing this interview. If someone were to go look, they would find that there's some nonprofit or organization out there for almost any need you have.
Mm-hmm.
If it's an abusive person, if someone who's struggling with drug and alcohol addiction, if it's, you name it, there's probably some organization out there that is there. And you recognize that then as a young person.
Yeah, that's compassion, right? I don't know if that's the Christian tradition that it came from that. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's get to the negative side. What were some of the things that were maybe a little ugly about this culture? Because again, every culture has beautiful things and every culture has ugly things.
Yeah, well, I was called the chink and I didn't know what it was. And it's so funny because I remember riding my bike, I'm a little fast, so a little risky, right? But, I know where I'm going. I have my, brakes. So I was in San Francisco, it's a little hilly, a little twisted. And then I almost ran into an old woman,
Yeah.
right? This woman probably in her 60s, 70s. But I had my break, so I stopped.
Yeah.
And then she looked at me and she said, chink.
And you had no idea what that word meant.
No. And I was like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
So sorry, bye. I had no idea, right? And I went back and I asked, I said, this person called me chink. What does that mean?
Yeah. And again, this was you coming into a culture where you thought all these ethnicities just got along.
Uh-huh.
So day 3, there's the Rodney King riots, and then you're called this name that carries a lot of negativity and ugliness with it.
And also just how dirty the city is. San Francisco is so gorgeous.
Yeah.
But why is it so dirty? I've never seen streets that dirty in China.
It's not like that in China? Really?
No.
Wow.
Because guess what? If you are poor, but you're able-bodied, go sweep the street. In the morning, sweep it. Make sure that everybody has a clean environment. At least you can sweep the street, right? And then you can eat and live, right? Contribute. Be like everybody else that's contributing in society. So that's the culture. And I couldn't believe, why would a rich nation allow itself to be, denigrated and defaced? Like what's going on? Why? And why are there so many homeless people?
I'm smiling because this is why I love to talk to people that maybe come from a different culture and have a different lens. And you've been here long enough that yours is probably, you've commingled these in a lot of ways, but you just see things from a different perspective. Like people that grow up here, especially if you grow up in the city. See, I grew up very rural. So when I first went to cities, I was like, this is disgusting. Why doesn't anybody take care of their stuff? Like I grew up rural and you took care of your place. If your fence was falling, you fixed your fence, you painted your house, and then you go there. It's just people throwing their trash on the side. It just blew me away.
Right.
But you saw it from a different perspective instead of people just
poor,
accepting it.
Right. We were a very poor nation, but we wouldn't allow, our home to be, trashed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So what led you into currently the field you're in? We're going to get to that in a moment, this regenerative medicine. But what led you into that?
Growing up in Chinese culture, it means that we have access to the traditional Chinese medicine. That's everywhere. That permeates everywhere, right? If you break a bone, there are certain patches you can put on your skin that allows all the herbs and, the different concoctions in the Chinese medicine to be delivered deeper into your skin, right? Everybody uses that. So you're not going to get rid of it because they work. So why would it ever disappear, right? So that's all part of, what you do. Okay, so you hurt yourself and put that patch on with all these herbs. So in any hospital in China, there's a Chinese medicine department. So sometimes a doctor may say, well, you need to go see the Chinese medicine doctor. So go over to that department. And then they have a Chinese medicine pharmacy and a Western pharmacy in the same hospital.
Interesting.
Yeah, 2 different pharmacies. So either you go get some Chinese medicine or go get some Western medicine. So they coexist. And there's no prejudice. Some people love the Chinese medicine part. And for some conditions, the Chinese medicine simply work better. So there's I've never sensed that there's prejudice against each other. So just whatever works. And Chinese medicine's a lot is about prevention. That you want to harmonize, you want to balance so that you are always in a good state.
Yep.
You're never going to go awry.
Yep.
And you're not going to suffer. The Western medicine, of course, doesn't know what to do if you're not suffering.
Yep.
It's changing now because that's a whole longevity medicine that we don't have to wait until you are struck down with something, right? We can do it earlier. But that's a foreign concept in Western medicine for a very, very long time.
Well, this is such an interesting subject to me because this is where when my wife and I'm 54 now, when we came into our 50s, we started talking, just going, you know what? Let's start talking more about quality of life at this stage because medicine for us, we were typical Westerners. You went to the doctor when you broke a bone. You went to the doctor when you had a fever 104 or whatever, and they just fixed it. And a lot of times they weren't really fixing the core problem. Mm-hmm. They were just fixing the symptom of maybe a bigger problem. So we started looking at, okay, how do we, for however many more years we get on this earth, how do we have a better quality of life, which goes to preventative? How do we try to prevent some of this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
So we've been going down that road, getting our blood work done and having people look.
Smart.
Yeah. And so that's what's fascinating about what you did. But I loved how you said you didn't throw either one out. You're not throwing Western medicine out completely.
No.
And you're not throwing historical Chinese medicine or anything else.
I'll tell you a funny story.
Yeah.
When I was in medical school. So this tells you, my own evolution, because I love science, right? That's why I went into medicine. Like, this is so cool, like all these machines and testing methods. It's just cool stuff. And then in medical school, remember the kid was talking down about acupuncture because it doesn't know how it works.
Yeah.
And then I realized Western medicine a lot of times don't know how it works, but then because it works, so that became part of the, the tenets of medicine. So I felt it was really arrogant and I didn't trust it. I lost some of my respect for it because I just thought it was just, double standard. So in my second year of medical school, when I was at the height of my disillusion about the arrogance of Western medicine, I got sick because all the students were passing this cold or flu to each other in the study hall. So we had 150 students and half of us were sick before the exam. And I was so sick that I couldn't get to a doctor. I was just basically laid up in bed, miserable. And I was like, I am determined not to use any Western medicine because they're arrogant bastards and they don't even know how it works.
Yeah.
And they think Chinese medicine don't work. So I'm just going to use all these alternative forms of healing. So I was doing vapor, I was taking herbs, I was doing everything I know to get myself better. And I wasn't getting better. And then I called my mom when I was really sick and I was like sniffling. I was like, Mom, I'm really sick and I don't have the strength to go to the doctor. She said, did you take antibiotics? I said, no. And she said, why not? Take some antibiotics. I said, no, they I was mad. I was mad at these. And she's like, just take some, that because my mom had always been the one that was treating me either with Chinese medicine or Western medicine. Yep. So she's kind of very fluid, whatever works. Yep. She said, just take the antibiotics. So I was like, fine. So I have some that I brought from China, right? Because you can't just get antibiotics. You have to get a doctor's practice. But in China, you can just buy it.
Okay.
So I had some with me. So I took some and I quickly became better.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, I'm feeling so much better so fast. So that was, that's another, light bulb going off saying, okay, don't go to an extreme. Respect both forms of medicine.
Yeah. So on your website, it actually says, this is a line that's right on your website, the ethical and effective regenerative medicine, that's what you're involved or connected with. So I want you, just for our audience, to define each of those terms. So I'm going to start at the end and work backwards, right? Yeah. Regenerative medicine, what does that mean?
So regenerative means tapping into your body's own potential so it can make yourself new, right? Regenerate, that means new cells, new tissue. So completely a whole new structure, a whole new entity. So it's not about hitting receptors, calming the symptoms so you don't feel it, or temporarily allowing the same old damaged tissue to kind of hang on, which is a lot of what Western medicine is doing. The tissues are still damaged, but you're doing okay. Right? You're doing okay with the damage. But no, we want to go a step further. No, let's get rid of the damaged tissue. Let's make it whole new tissue. Right.
So can I give you an example? Maybe you explain. And if this is a bad example, then maybe you come up with one that's better. So about a year and a half ago, I tore my Achilles. It wasn't completely ruptured. And at my age, the doctor's like, we're not going to do surgery because it'll actually reattach it. Or since it was somewhat attached, it'll grow back. But that would be a situation where Western medicine would typically, you go in, you get surgery, they sew your Achilles back together, and then tell you to stay off of it for 6 weeks and then start doing some rehab. Regenerative medicine would take it a step further, and what would they maybe recommend?
So, first of all, just because you're using Western medicine, it doesn't mean that your body is not regenerating, right? But they may not know what they're doing is the connecting part, which sometimes are very important, that there are physical limits on how the tissue can find each other. So sometimes when you bring them together, your body has the intelligence to start rebuilding and forming a whole new structure, right? So
Yeah.
if you're healed, when things are repaired, that means your body is performing regeneration. They may not be doing anything to trigger it.
Yeah.
Although if they're smart doctors these days, they're going to put some stem cells in there, put some exosomes, and put some PRP, at least PRP.
Yeah.
Right. So then
And that's the regenerative part you're talking about.
Then they're targeting the regenerative process.
Mm-hmm.
So then they're awakening up the process.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what regenerative medicine is awakening your body.
So your body's already doing this, but you're just almost helping your body speed it up or do it. Yeah. Because Dr. Joy, that was the part that I was fascinated with when I went in and, they looked at it and they go, it's not completely torn or ruptured. So we're not, unless you're a runner. And I said, I hate running. The only reason I'm running anymore in my life is if I'm running for my life. So don't worry about that part of it. I'm not a runner anymore. So they said, okay, we won't do surgery. And I'm like, well, then how's it going to fix itself? And they're like, it will actually, because it's still attached, it will, and I'm going to use your words now, regenerate or fix it. I'm like, I was blown away. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Well, if you just look at your skin, if you get a cut, don't you use skin? That's regeneration.
Yeah.
It's connecting, reconnecting, remaking new tissue. Yeah. So your body has that kind of intelligence.
Yeah.
And all we need to do is to give it the right signal. The problem with us getting older, and as you can see, right, not only on our faces where there are more wrinkles, but if you cut yourself, you heal way slower than when you were a little kid.
Yeah.
So why is that? Because your body doesn't have enough signals to repair. If you blast the body with the right signals, then your cells will know what to do. So just to give you the statistics, when we were born, every 1 in 10 cells is this really crucial type of stem cell. It's called mesenchymal stem cell. So MSC for short.
Okay.
So 1 in 10,000, right, when you're born. When you got to your teenager years, it has become 1 in 100,000.
What?
So you're at 1/10 the capabilities of regeneration in that sense as when
just
you were born.
Just between your birth years and your teenage years.
You think you're invincible, right? You're a
teenager.
Your
teenage years especially.
You're not. You're way less invincible than you were a baby, right? We'll talk about how people do surgeries on, or even on fetus, right? There's absolutely no scar because their body's teeming with these signals. It just completely revamps everything.
I don't even know if I want to know the answer to this. What would that be for someone my age now? Or
so what we know is someone in their 40s, it's 1 in 400,000.
Oh.
So, and when you reach your 80s, is 1 in 2 million. So you're somewhere between 1 in 400,000 to 1 in 2 million. So my guess is 1 in about 600.
I feel like when I turned 52, my body just gave up. So it might be more like 1 in 2 million or something.
So can you imagine? You used to have all these cells to give you signals. And then it just got less, right? 1/10, and then a quarter of the signal compared to you when you were a teenager, when you're in your 40s. So the body, I ask people to visualize a TV screen, right? So if you want to decipher what's going on the TV, you need to have good reception. Mm-hmm. And if the signals start to fade, then you see all these pixelated images and you don't know what it's saying. You don't know what is the story? What I can't follow anymore. But all of a sudden, if I can blast you with these cells that's full of signals, now it's returned to high def. Now the information's coming through. Now your body knows.
See, and that's so interesting because I don't know what your worldview is, but I come from a Judeo-Christian worldview. And so all I would say with that is I would go, all right, this is the way we were created with, like you're saying, as a little baby, you're created and look at how God made you. But as you get older, that's shifting, that's changing. And because God, and this is the worldview that I have, because God made us as the pinnacle of his creation, humanity was created in his image, we have the ability, the research that you're doing and the kind of stuff that you're doing, where we can figure out maybe how to tap into that and help our bodies go back to the way they were when we were children.
So what we're doing is that we're knocking on God's door, saying, God, can you tell us, what did you do? What did you do? What are the information that you meant for us to know?
You just gave me goosebumps when you said that. Like you're knocking on us. You're right. How fascinating. So this is where I'm just geeking out on this right now. You can tell I'm smiling really big because when you just gave that statistic, what was it, 1 in 10,000?
Mm-hmm.
And then it turns into 1 in 100,000?
As a teenager.
And then in your 40s, it's 1 in 400,000? And then mine is somewhere around 1 in 14 million or something.
No.
I'm exaggerating for me. But
you're running out of signals.
So regenerative medicine is, to use that example, is to maybe figure out how to tap into that And you're maybe not going to bring it back to 1 in 10,000, but
yeah, regenerative medicine is reintroducing intelligence.
I like that. Okay, so let me, again, on your website, it says ethical and effective regenerative medicine. Effective.
Well, we want to be evidence-based,
Okay.
right? You would never find me making claims or overpromising somebody. What we teach people is what research has shown. And if no research has been done on a particular issue a person's struggling with, then we talk about what the cells do. What kind of cells do? What has science shown that these cells can do? What we know, even we just use the example of mesenchymal stem cells, MSCs. They're highly anti-inflammatory. They balance the immune system, so they make your immune system more vigilant and more high functioning if it's too low, and they make it less problematic and less overactivated when it's too much, like in autoimmune diseases. And it can break down scar tissue, which very few things in medicine can do that. It can trigger the local stem cells to make new working cells. So in every organ, there are tissue-specific stem cells that can regenerate that organ. So we don't really, a lot of times, we don't even need to give you cells that have that particular capability. All we need is to give you the cells that can tell those cells to start working and make new tissue.
Really? So they're almost just messaging the cells.
Yeah.
And saying, here's what you need to do.
Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy.
This is why what's fascinating is research has shown over and over and over again. It became like a mantra because they thought in early stages of stem cell therapy, people thought you have to put the cells where the diseased tissue is because we need these cells to make the new tissue, right? They need to divide and become that tissue. And it turns out what they found out is again and again, the new tissue that was formed was not of the origin of the new cells you put in. It's your own. It's from your own local cells.
Wow.
So you're just waking up the body.
Just waking up the body.
Yeah. So
or knocking on God's door, as you said before,
exactly.
and tapping into, yeah.
That's right. The whisper.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's the regenerative property.
Yeah.
And then it has the ability to help you form new blood vessels. So it triggers angiogenesis. Now you got blood supply to a particular area. It also has anti-cancer properties. So if something is not normal and these cells don't belong,
right?
Yeah,
Yep.
especially younger mesenchymal stem cells comparing to older ones, that's in adult's body. The older you are, the less your capabilities of detecting cancer is. This is why age is the biggest predictor for cancer. So these cells have the ability to send a particular signal, a ligand. That ligand will tell the cancer cells to die, will trigger programmed cell death. And also, for these cells, it make them die. But for other cells that somehow, the intelligence, these stem cells know these other cells are damaged, but they can't be salvaged and they don't have to die. Then it will send different signals to save them from death. Because sometimes when you have a crush injury or stroke, ischemia, the cells that were not directly affected end up dying. And that doesn't have to happen. These cells have the intelligence to save them. So all these are different properties of the stem cells. Not to mention, my favorite is that if you have younger cells, they have younger mitochondria. So they can actually infuse your cells with this younger mitochondria. Wow. So elevating the energy of your cells. Yeah. All these are mechanisms of how they work. So if a person comes in with a particular condition and there's no research about how, the stem cells, whether or not it can help this condition, then I'll analyze the origins of their condition. If there's any inflammation and there's any tissue injury and there's immune imbalance, then these cells is dovetail, right? It is exactly fits the scenario. And then there's a reason to believe that they can help. Yeah. So that's the, talking about effective is that we are, I'm not claiming the cells are effective, but what I want to show is through research that we can see what's effective. Yeah. And even if not, then let's look at the mechanism. Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that because we can look throughout human history and see that people have always been selling stuff that doesn't work, snake oil, so to speak, right? I put that in quotes. But you're saying that you're working with something that is proving to be, through scientific studies, effective. It's not snake oil, so to speak.
This is why I founded an academy. So it's American Academy of Integrative Cell Therapy.
Yeah.
We actually have an online training and we have in-person certification training. And anyone comes to training, we go through ad nauseum all these clinical studies from around the world. There are a lot of them for every category of disease. I mean, I have all these organ systems, over 30 organ systems. Each one sometimes can have, 10, 15 diseases. And what has been studied, what has been shown. So it's very much that we need to respect that the evidence is there. It's the same thing, same attitude to acupuncture. There are evidence that are there. And just because you as a doctor haven't looked into whether or not there's evidence, some doctors will tell patients that there's no evidence just because they haven't looked. And I see that happen all the time. This is not isolated.
For sure. Let me make a statement, and then I want to get back to that phrase that on your website that we're asking you to define. This, again, is just coming from my worldview. Thank God, Dr. Joy, that you came from the culture that you did, and you came to this culture, and kind of your life story about how you're balancing these two with Western medicine and the medicine that you grew up with, and recognizing don't throw either one out, because now you're taking that and impacting so many lives, like the quality of life, maybe even saving people's lives, because you're able to do that. So I just thank God your journey has led you to this point. So interesting. Well, let me go back to that website definition. You said the ethical and effective regenerative medicine. So you defined regenerative medicine. You've defined effective. What do you mean by ethical?
Yeah. So first of all,
as we're wrapping up this episode, be sure to leave us a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment on something you'll take away. All right, let's hop back into the remainder of the episode.
When we came into medicine, right, the Hippocratic Oath is that first do no harm. So that's very important, ethical, principle. So if I have a choice between different forms of therapy and one cause less potential harm, then I have to choose that one, right? This is one reason why I'm choosing to use umbilical cord-derived stem cells, because by comparing using umbilical cord-derived stem cells versus a person's own fat-derived stem cells or their own bone marrow-derived stem cells. One is that I found out, if anyone's interested, go to YouTube, watch my 40-minute lecture called Are All MSCs Created Equal? Because
is that on your website? If they go to your website, I'm going to ask you to give us your website later.
Yeah, probably just on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, it may be on there as well, but they have to dig. But if they just go on YouTube, just put Are All MSCs Created Equal? They will find that I give scientific overview of all the studies comparing these different sources. So not only the umbilical cord source is more effective in so many ways, in all parameters they've investigated, but it's also safer because when you use umbilical cord, which is when the baby's born, right? Healthy, live birth, no abortion is involved. Live, healthy birth, the tissue used to be tossed into the biological wastebasket. Now we can use it to help people repair.
Isn't that crazy? So we were throwing away for so long, something that has so much value.
Yeah, huge.
So the stem cells specifically, and you're saying they're the best stem cells to use that you're pulling from an umbilical. So a birthing happens.
That's the ethical part.
Yeah.
Right. No baby's harmed.
Yeah.
Because we only take it from donation. Yeah. From the healthy babies.
And that's important for people to hear, because for our audience, if you're a younger person listening, you probably they may not even know this argument that took place. Some people that are our age, a little closer to our age, are going to remember there was huge debates. As soon as you say stem cell research, there are some people that are like, oh, no, because early on, ethically, they were just like, well, this has to come from a fetus that's been destroyed or a baby.
You know what I found out is that lies die hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I just can't believe there's so many myths that are persisting. And one of them is that, are you hurting babies? And I go, no. So yes, initially.
I could tell the way you looked at me when I said that you were so tired of having to explain this.
But you know what? I will keep explaining. As long as the lie is around, I'll keep explaining. But initially, yes, a lot of the research was conducted on embryonic stem cells. And that does involve the destruction of an embryo. Yeah. And a lot of people have ethical, disagreements with that, especially in this Judeo-Christian culture. Not all cultures have problems with that, but in this culture, yes. So George W. Bush was the one that banned federal funding for research that will lead to new destruction of new embryos. So it's not like he's banning research altogether. He just doesn't want new embryos to be destroyed. That was it. That's the extent of that controversy, right?
Yep.
But nobody in the US is giving people embryonic stem cells.
Yeah.
That came from the destruction of an embryo, right?
Yep.
That's not even legal.
Yeah.
So,
but I just wanted to make sure that our audience understood that, because even when you're talking about going to this YouTube video that you're talking about, you're actually pulling those. So baby is birthed or whatever, and then you're taking the stuff that used to just be thrown, and it was like the afterbirth and all that. It was just thrown in the garbage. And that's where you're pulling these stem cells that have this regenerative medicine that, for me personally, just blows my mind what we're finding out that it can do.
Because they're younger, so they're more potent. What's really cool is that people think, oh, that's the same age as the baby. Mm-mm. The cells you're getting from the umbilical cord and the placenta is actually in between as far as the age, the evolutionary age of, just the characteristic of the cells. It's in between the embryonic stem cells, which is only the cells around the first week or so of the after fertilization, between the embryonic stem cells and the baby stem cells. So it's sitting kind of in the middle, because when the embryo was formed, all these early cells were trapped right there, and they haven't changed that much.
Really?
So it's way more potent than the cells you can get from the baby. So this is what's really fascinating. So they're more potent. So, from the research have shown that it's actually more effective. They secrete more growth factors. They're more anti-inflammatory. They're more neuroprotective. So, and they have more generations left to keep working in your body. So there are a lot of reasons why they're more potent and more effective. But they're also safer, because when they're younger, they can detect cancer more effectively and kill off the cancer. But when you're older, because research have shown direct comparison of fat-derived mesenchymal stem cells versus umbilical cord-derived mesenchymal stem cells, they put both types next to a tumor, which is glioblastoma, a very terrible form of brain cancer. They put two different types of cells next to the cancer, the tumor, either in the petri dish or on the live animal's body. And in both cases, the fat-derived stem cells make the cancer grow bigger and bigger. But the umbilical cord stem cells make the cancer shrink, and go away. This is how vastly different it is.
Yeah.
And this is why ethically, I have the obligation to give people something that I know is much safer for them.
Yeah.
That's why I do not do stem cell treatment that obtains cell from a person's own body.
Yeah. Wow. Man, I could talk to you for a long time, because this is fascinating. So how would people get a hold of you or look at what you're doing? Like, what's your website? And we'll put that in our show notes and in the description of this podcast as well.
Yeah. So I have a personal website, which talks about everything I do.
Yep.
So it's joykongmd.com.
Okay.
So that has information on my clinic with Chara Health in Los Angeles. And then it has information on the stem cell company I developed, because that's a company, we have our own unique products that combines different sections of the umbilical cord. So I'm not just tapping into potential from one sector. And, I want to mention this because you said you're, from the Judeo-Christian tradition, because I've always said, why did God put all those different cells in that cord? And they're all different, right? They're all a little different. Because when you actually look at their surface receptors, their growth factor profile, and their differentiation pathways, they're all a little different.
Yep.
And they all work to some extent, but nothing works for everything. So who am I to play God, saying, I'm just going to give you cells from the umbilical cord tissue, just Wharton's jelly, because I know it's really good. Well, why did God put all these other cells there? So what I did is that I'm respecting the full authority of the information, that I'm bringing all these cells into one entity from the same donor. And then I give it to people.
Yeah.
Because then we're harnessing everything that has been given to us.
Fascinating.
Oh, okay. So that's the stem cell company.
Yeah.
And then I have Education Academy. So I've trained a lot of doctors. So it's called AAICT, American Academy of Integrated Cell Therapy. And then I have the book, the link to my book. Yep. And then my podcast, the Dr. Joy Kong podcast.
And then do you have some of your products on there too?
Oh yeah, so Chara Omni is kind of an offshoot from the stem cell company because I decided that I wanted to have a good cream for myself at first because I realized there's a lack of all natural creams on the market. You know, being in the anti-aging field, I know how different household products, how much these different chemicals have unforeseen problems. And I'm just not willing to risk myself, right? This is your skin's the most absorbent organ in the body. Yeah. Like I'm just going to take everything right in. So why would I put something that's potentially toxic? Yeah. So it's not only all natural, but it has stem cells and peptides and all kinds of good herbal extracts in it.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, for our audience, we're going to have this link that you just referenced. We'll have it in our description and our show notes for them as well, because I'd love for them to, and I'm certainly going to do that. I'm going to go, you brought this book for me, so I'm going to read this book, but I'm going to go look at more of the research that you're doing. Like you said, it fits right in line with stuff that my wife and I have been talking about, the quality of life. And now we have grown kids, and we have 7 grandkids now. And of course, with our grandkids, we want them. You know, I'm looking as a grandparent now going like, okay, this research as you're doing, it could have a massive impact on them. You know, as they get older, they're going to catch diseases and things. And so I just love hearing about people that are trying to figure out, how do we solve this? Yeah. How do we uncover the mysteries of God's creation? So
yeah, exactly.
Dr. Joy, thank you so much for being on this podcast. You are well-spoken, for one thing. This has been one of the easiest, most fun interviews I've had. Like you are very well-spoken. One of the things we always do is the 2 truths and a lie at the end. And this is always fun for our audience because they've heard you for about an hour. This is a way for them to get to know you a little bit better and for me to try to guess. So you can give me 3 statements. 2 will be true, 1 will be a lie, and I got to try to guess the lie.
Okay, all right. So, so one statement is that that I went on a medical mission in Ethiopia.
Okay.
Another one is that I spent a month studying Spanish in Cuba.
Okay.
Another one is that I'm the executive producer of a documentary about the 2 RFKs.
Wow. Okay. I think I cheated on this one because I think you mentioned, I know you went to Cuba, but I don't know if you added that part about that you studied Spanish there. So I'm going to say that's true. You went to Cuba to study Spanish?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So do you know 3, because I'm assuming you grew up speaking Mandarin.
Yeah.
And English.
Well, Spanish, I love Spanish, but I wouldn't say I'm fluent, but I love the language. Yeah.
It's such a beautiful thing. Most people in this world are bilingual at least, except for Americans. There's so many of us where we're forced to take a foreign language, but you take 2 years of it in school and it really doesn't do you any good. But
I guess America's thought is on top of the world, so everybody better speak your language.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm down to a 50-50 chance. Medical mission to Ethiopia or executive producer. That one's so far out. I'm going to go with the executive producer. That's true.
Yes.
Oh, I got it. All right. Good.
Good job.
Good. Really? So that must have been fascinating.
So the documentary is available on, all kinds of channels on Amazon. It's actually also executive produced by Oliver Stone. Yeah. It's a beautiful documentary.
Yeah. What's the name of it?
Legacy.
Okay. I'm going to look that up. I love documentaries.
Yeah, and it's such an important part of our history.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, he's really doing everyone a service to not let people forget it.
Yeah.
And the legacy is living on.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. Have you ever been to Africa?
Yes.
Have you? Okay. What part? Was it East Africa?
I've been to Ethiopia, Kenya, Djibouti. Yeah.
I've been to Africa quite a number of times, but all of it's East Africa. So same kind of thing. Uganda, Rwanda, Kenya area. Yeah. Landed in Ethiopia and Addis Ababa, the capital. But
I came back from Ethiopia with a whole head of braids.
Yeah.
About 200
Did you
of them.
Really?
Yes.
So my daughter went to Rwanda with me and she did the same thing. She came back with a whole head of those little braids that I don't know how long it took them to do that.
It took 8 hours.
Yeah. Did you have a headache afterwards? Usually they're pulling on your hair so much.
It was, it can be a challenge. Yeah, but I loved it.
Well, as you can see, those days are behind me. I will not have braids ever again. But well, Dr. Joy, thank you so much for being on the No Gray Areas podcast. It was just a pleasure of mine to get to interview you, and I think you truly educated us all, so we appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
It's been a wonderful interview. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Dr. Joy Kong as much as I did. One of the biggest takeaways for me is this: your health ultimately becomes your responsibility. The more informed you are, the more empowered you are to make decisions for yourself and your family. And like we often talk about on this podcast, the choices we make today shape the life we live tomorrow. Thanks for spending some time with us on the No Gray Areas podcast, and we'll see you in the next episode.